In the book of Judges, let's go there. We're going to look at chapter 17, and here in this section of the book of Judges, we're going to be shown just how corrupt and ignorant Israel had become. And we're not that far off from where the days of Joshua ended. We're not really far off from there. And in the days of the Judges, verse 6, just looking in Judges 17, verse 6, we see these words, "In those days there was no king in Israel." All right, that's the end of one thought. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That's the second thought. These things don't go together. This just describes the condition that was in Israel. They didn't have a king. Well, they'd never had a king. With Moses was not a king. Joshua was not a king. But they didn't always do what was right in their own eyes. They did what was right according to God's law and His eyes. This is two separate thoughts. There's no king in Israel, but everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And that shows, actually explaining a corruption that went on there. Now, the book of Judges does not point out to every single thing that, as it describes someone's actions. It does not say, "and this was wrong," and other actions and saying this was right. You should already know, because you've got the law of Moses prior to the book of Judges. You've got that law, and if you've read that, then you know if someone is going according to the law of Moses or not. And I've had more than one person talk about to me, why did God allow for angels A, B, and C? And I say, A, B, and C? You mean from the book of Judges? And I said, I don't know where it was. So we'll go to the book of Judges. And I'll try to show them this is not according to the will of God. This is their own will. This is the wickedness of that people. Just because God doesn't make comment on it, and this was wrong, and this was wrong, and this was wrong, and this was really wrong, it doesn't say that. You should have the common sense and the knowledge to know, to be able to determine. And we have little things like this. In those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And that is a notation there, that what they were doing, they thought was right. There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof is the way of death. Yeah. All right. Yes, that is correct. We're going to see in this, we're only going to do the 13 verses of chapter 17. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to look at it bit by bit and note some things. Note the corruption, note the ignorance, note the absurdity of it, because these people are ignorant of what they are doing. They believe they are serving the Lord. They believe it. But it is as though you're looking at, like use it in modern terms, like an alternate universe. That they have certain words they have kept, but they're not obedient to God at all. This is something weird that has transpired. This is something very, very strange. How did we get to this point? It's almost as though, well, there is a semblance of things that are Mosaic. There's a semblance by way of words and certain ideas. But as far as the details are concerned, as far as the specifics are concerned, it's far from biblical. It's far from actual law of Moses. It's far from it. It's using similar words and similar institutions, similar things, but it's far from it. It's like they had divorced themselves from the law of Moses, but they have a few words remaining from it, just by way of traditions. Now, I have noticed, just in visiting certain places, I've noticed going into places like cathedrals. or these church buildings, things that they're not cathedrals, but these buildings of individuals who believe they are worshiping God. They believe they're worshiping Christ in particular. They believe they're worshiping Christ. Going in and seeing things that, okay, why is that here? Why do we need, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Why do we need 20 statues of English kings here? Why is that even here? All right, why on this stained glass window do we have what would appear to be like a biblical scene? I can't really distinguish which one it is. We have an angel and someone with a small dog. I don't know who that's supposed to be. And then we have someone who is clearly dressed as a nurse with a bicycle. All right, what's that about? What's that all about? Why is that there? Or why is there inside this building these images of people that are clearly from the 1600s with the big collar and all that? Why are they even here? And I remember in one particular place, matter of fact, it's York Minster, there is an object way up high that is so bizarre. You just look at it and you wonder, well, there's nothing else like it around. What is that thing? It looks like it's a metallic dragon, okay? Stretched out neck with the head of a dragon with some kind of hook on it. And okay, what is that about? What's that for? And they actually don't know. It's been there for a long time, and the reason for it is completely forgotten. Why is it even there? And all of these things coming in by way of people who believe they are worshiping Christ, but other things have come in. Obviously they have. And you have this perversion, this degeneration, and this presumptive worship of God. It's all folly. Every bit of it. And in reading the words of these people, and we're going to here in Judges chapter 17, we're going to see one thing after another, after another, after another. It's like, what? They don't stop. They don't stop. Somehow they think they're being pleasing to God, and we can know they're not. So let's just begin. Okay, Judges chapter 17, verse 1. Now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim whose name was Micah. So we're starting out identifying who this is about. And he said to his mother, and Micah, by the way, is not a boy. Micah has grown sons. Okay, Micah says to his mother, the 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and on which you put a curse, even saying it in my ears, here is the silver with me, I took it. Okay, so he's a thief. He stole from his mother this 1,100 shekels of silver. He stole it from her. She put a curse on the silver, and now he's returning it back to her. And his mother said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my son. So Micah, the son, stole the shekels of silver. His mother put a curse on that silver. He gives it back, and then she says, may you be blessed by the Lord, my son. All right, so this already is coming off as very, very strange, but we continue. This is where it gets extremely strange. So when he had returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, I had wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord, my son, to make a carved image and a molded image. Now, therefore, I return it to you. She had dedicated the silver to the Lord for what reason? To make a carved image and a molded image. For the Lord? All right, already we can see that we can see the absurdity. We've dedicated something to the Lord that's going to be made into household idols? Is that what we're doing? And now some commentators will say, and I'm not going to disagree with them, that this carved image and molded image was meant to represent Jehovah. Have they not read the book of Exodus? Because not only is there a law against that, that would be the second commandment in the Ten Commandments, there is a law against that, but we also see where Aaron and most of Israel gets together to do that very thing, and what occurred afterwards. And the answer to that would have to be, I seriously doubt they know anything about it. I'm sure they would know, yeah, there's a book, and it's Israel coming out of Egypt and Sinai and all that. But did they actually know about the book beyond just maybe a scattering of ideas? It doesn't appear to be. It doesn't appear at all to be. And this doesn't seem to even concern them, that you can't do this. They just do it. And they think they're being pleasing to God. They think it. Now, this kind of absurdity is not just going to be found in the ancient world or going to be found among the Hebrews in the ancient world. It continues today with people who thoroughly today believe they are worshiping Christ. They believe it while having all the idolatry that could be found in the pagan world. All the idolatry. And all sorts of things that have been mixed in from popular culture, been mixed in from current streams of culture. All these things mixing in, and somehow by evoking God's name, it must be okay. It must be okay. I have good feelings about it. God should too, right? I feel comfortable with it. God should too. I'm all warm and fuzzy. God should be pleased with all this because I'm doing this for Him. So I'm dedicating these 200 shekels of silver for making this carved image and a molded image. So what is a carved image and what is a molded image? And why do you need silver in this? Okay, a carved image is a wooden image that has been carved by some sort of craftsman. Whatever the shape is, it doesn't say. But carved by some craftsman, and then it is, you have silver that is put over it. All right, because that's what she's using. The silver would be beaten down, or however it's done, and be put over the wooden image. Then you have the molded image. That is, that would be a solid silver, I can only assume. A solid silver object that is put into a mold, and the molten silver poured into the mold, and then you have an image that is created out of all this. Now, we go to verse 4. Thus he returned the silver to his mother. Then his mother took 200 shekels of silver, gave them to the silversmith, and he made it into a carved image and a molded image, and they were in the house of Micah. So these are placed into the house of Micah, and as I said, these possibly could have been some kind of representation of Jehovah, whatever image that may have been. It could have been a calf. I don't know. But that's coming from some commentators, anyway, who believe that was probably the case. Now, verse 5. The man Micah had a shrine and made an ephod and household idols, and he consecrated one of his sons who became his priest. Now, in this one verse, we have so many misconceptions, so much wrong thinking and wrong doing that you just have to stop and wonder, what has happened? What has happened? Well, everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. Everyone is doing it. Things have just become corrupted. He made an ephod. Well, an ephod is for a priest. All right? Ephods are not made by someone who's going to hire or assign his own personal priest. There is no such thing as one's personal priest. You did not hire a priest. Now, also in this is that they're Ephraimites. They're from the mountains of Ephraim. They're Ephraimites. He's going to hire his son, consecrate one of his sons to become a priest for him in a shrine that they built. Now, so what happened to the tabernacle? Where is that? Oh, it's still around. It's going to be around come the days of David. It's still around. What happened to that one? Well, these anyway, in the mountains of Ephraim, and they're not going to, we're going to see a man coming from Bethlehem. He's a Levite. They don't seem to be aware that that's necessary at all. They've come to some of these other conclusions. And the thought that Micah could consecrate anyone to be priest is absurd. The thought that Micah could consecrate one of his sons is absurd. He has no authority to do any of that. None at all, but he's going to take it. This is presumptive. There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof is the way of death. This is presumptive. He thinks he's doing this to be pleasing to God. He thinks he is. Now, something's going to happen of where he's going to see, oh, now God must be pleased with me because I've done, and we'll see what's going to happen next. Okay, so we have these words, we've already read them. In those days there was no king in Israel, verse 6. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. This explains what's going on if you needed an explanation. If you needed to understand, why are these people doing this? What's happened in all this? Well, they're just doing what's right in their own eyes. These are conditions of the people of Israel. And this also, verse 6, is going to lead us into what happens next, into understanding, because it's going to be more than just chapter 17. It's going much further, that things are going to get more and more strange and destructive. Now, we're not getting into all that. We're not going into chapter 18 or 19. Things are getting more and more destructive, and what's going to happen in this section of the book is you're going to have one tribe of Benjamin that is almost eliminated. One tribe against 11 tribes, and it's almost done in. That's in this section of Judges. Now, chapter 17 has nothing to do with this, and Micah has nothing to do with this. But we continue on. Verse 7, and this sets us up for what's going to happen next. Now, there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah. He was a Levite and was staying there. So here we have this Levite living in Bethlehem. Okay. The man departed from the city of Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he could find a place. Then he came to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, as he journeyed. So he's just this young man. He's a Levite by birth, and he's looking for his place. He's looking to find a situation. He's looking to find what he could be doing. And so he's just traveling. And he comes to the house of Micah here in Ephraim, the mountains of Ephraim. And Micah said to him, where do you come from? That's a simple question. Where do you come from? So he said to him, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am on my way to find a place to stay. So he's looking for an occupation. He's looking for a job, something to do, to where he can settle down somewhere. Evidently he's not satisfied with Bethlehem, or Bethlehem can't do it for him, or whatever it is. He's doing whatever he wants, and he's just as foolish as Micah and his family is. He's just as foolish as they are. Micah said to him, dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, a suit of clothes, and your sustenance. So the Levite went in. Once again, you can't hire a priest. That is, a personal priest. You can't hire one. That's not the way it's done. That's not the way it was set up by God. You don't just hire one and that one becomes your priest. There's an entire Levitical priesthood set up by God, and they are supported by the rest of Israel in their givings. That priesthood is supported by that no one just pays for a priest to do whatever duties they want him to do. That's not the way it's done. Then the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. So everything's going great. As far as that's concerned, he's treated very well. He becomes this father and a priest to Micah. So, verse 12, so Micah consecrated the Levite to dwell with the man. Now, just because the biblical text, now in two verses, here in chapter 17, said that Micah consecrated his son to be a priest. Now he's consecrating this young man to be a priest, doesn't mean he consecrated anybody. It doesn't mean that what he did was legitimate before God or seen as right before God or anything remotely good. He does it because evidently he's wealthy enough to be able to hire a priest for himself, to be at his shrine. Okay, so Micah, verse 12, so Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in the house of Micah. Now, he's a Levite, but is this even remotely the Levitical priesthood? And the answer is obviously no. Not even close. Once again, there's a semblance. He already had his son as a priest. Here comes this Levite, and he knows, now that's the one I need to hire. Because he is a Levite. He is a genuine, the sort that should be priest. Never mind that he already saw his son as being legitimate. Here is someone that's going to be more so. Here is someone now he can use, and surely God will be pleased with this. But this is not the Levitical priesthood. This is not how priests are made. This is not it. There would have been a legitimate priesthood in this day, and obviously these men don't seem to think so. They seem to think there must be more than one way to do this. There's more than one path to please God, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe there's only one way to please God. And if God specifies one way, then that means every other potential or imagined way is wrong. Every other, if he specified one way, then nothing else would be right other than that one way. Now we understand that when it comes to people, what your boss wants, what someone is asking you to do, what the law of the land happens to be. We understand those things perfectly well. But some reason when it comes to God, we lose our mind. We think that, well, we just decide to justify everything. And personally, I think this goes in with the works of Satan, that Satan is actively doing this. Satan doesn't care about you being disobedient to anybody except what is against the will of God. Anything that's against the will of God, that's what he's going to tempt you to do. And these people seem to be oblivious. Micah is willing to have a son as priest. And now he's willing to have this priest and hire him instead. And the priesthood isn't there to serve some employer. That's not what the priesthood was for. The priesthood was to serve God. Now, and His ways. Now we come to these last words, verse 13. Then Micah said, notice, this is oblivious. Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, since I have a Levite as priest. Note, he knew something. He knew that consecrating his son wasn't as good as having a Levite priest. Well, why did you go with your son? Because he needed somebody, I suppose. He had to have somebody. Well, what's wrong with, if you know that a priest must be a Levite, why did you even put your son into this? Just go for a Levite. But here's the thing, there's already a Levitical priesthood, and that exists. What's wrong with that priesthood? Because this is an altered priesthood. This is something else. Once again, if God specifies one thing, all other things are excluded. You have the Levitical priesthood, and this is what it looks like. This is what it does. This is how priests are chosen. This is what they do. You know, the priests didn't serve at the tabernacle and then go off to serve at shrines in various people's houses. They didn't do that. To be legitimate, they served at the tabernacle. And there were, not to do this legitimate, there were no carved image or molded images there. They're serving God. But somehow there is this denominational idea that God is pleased. Yeah, that's the way. He specifies that certainly. But the way I do it, He must be pleased with that too. He must be. Well, use a little bit of common sense. If you can decide how God is pleased, then it's up to your imagination as to how He's pleased. And it's up to anybody else's imagination how He's pleased. That it won't stop. Either there is a standard and God set the standard, or there is no standard. You do whatever you want to do, which is what they were doing. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. That is what they were doing. And did it get them in trouble? Yeah. It got them in a history of years and years of being in trouble. That's why you had oppressors that would come in, such as the Philistines, such as under the days of Samson. You have the Midianites. You have others that come in and they oppress Israel. Then, upon their repentance, wanting to serve God, He sends them a deliverer. Now, these are just some of the things that are happening, that happened in Israel to show how far they went. Now, the fact of the matter is, there's more that occurs in this. There's more, but we're stopping here. There's more that occurs in this. And I can't help when reading this of thinking, there's so many things going off, so many things going wrong, so many things that are just not right, that it's hard to count it. And they don't seem to understand. They don't seem to comprehend that what they are doing is entirely wrong. One thing after another, without knowing that they're wrong in the least. I think that describes a lot of people. They feel good, but that's all that can be said. They seem to have a nice feeling of spirituality, but there's nothing Christ-like that is going on. Not in worship, not in any obedience, not in salvation, not in anything, but just that feeling of it feels spiritual, it feels good. That's all it amounts to. It's just the experience of some emotion. That's all it amounts to. Nothing beyond that. And that's shallow. Nothing beyond that. Which is exactly what these people, Micah and all those around him, that would be what they're doing. Now the Lord, I know the Lord will be good to me because I have a Levite as priest. I've hired a Levite as priest. He must be okay by that. Well, that was hardly the case. That was hardly anything that God would be pleased with. Now, with this study is in fact to go over some matters that the ways of God can be corrupted by men. And it doesn't take very long at all. We've asked that question before. How long does it take for people to become entirely disobedient to God and going from the way God wants them to now doing whatever they want to do? And the answer to that is as soon as they want to do it. It's that quick. It is that quick. As soon as they want to do it. As soon as they are willing to do it. You have Israel at the base of Sinai with the powers of Jehovah being witnessed before them. And what are they doing? They're not waiting for a generation, for the next generation has been corrupted because they didn't learn anything. These are people witnessing the power of God right in front of them, and they are making their own golden image to worship it. It didn't take long at all. Just when you decide, that's how long it takes. It doesn't take but a second. Just whenever you decide. Now, for us, we need to make sure, and I do mean make sure, that we are doing right. Right in your own life, that you are obedient to God. Don't ignore Scriptures. Don't. Trust me, the easy is ignored just as quickly as the difficult. Things that are said very specifically couldn't be any more plain in language and intent, could not be any more clear. And yet, people reject it. Reject it. Something may be uncomfortable. Choose God's way, even if it seems uncomfortable. Something may appear to be inconvenient. Do God's way, even if it seems to be inconvenient. God's way is always going to be the right way. Always. Remembering Him and remembering Him in all things. We ask this evening that we look at our own lives. Judgment will be here. Our lives will then, everything is over at our death. That door is closed, and we'll be judged by how we did the things that we did on this earth. But if Christ comes before we die, which I don't know if He will or not, but if He comes before we die, then the door is closed at that point as well. We are judged by what we do in this life, and being faithful to Him is important. Being faithful to Him in all things. We ask this evening, if you need to respond to the invitation, that you come as we stand and sing.